Welcome to the Stockout. This is your show at FreightWaves for all things related to the consumer packaged goods industry, the CPG industry. I'm your host, Mike Baudendistel. I'm the head of intermodal solutions here at FreightWaves. We're primarily on the data side, but also do some media as well as it relates to the railroads and CPG. Have a great show today. Have Ben Richey from Black Rifle Coffee Company to talk about sort of the challenges that he's experiencing in his supply chain. So we're going to learn a lot from that. Also going to give us a quick rundown of the news. But before we do that, for anyone who's not already signed up for the Stockout newsletter, we get out a newsletter every Wednesday for all things related to CPG, things I'm seeing in the data, et cetera. And if you're not already signed up, please go to www.freightwaves.com/the Stockout. Or freightwaves.com/subscribe and subscribe to all the newsletters you want. This is going to be the first one there under supply chain. So encourage you to do that if you're not signed up already. And also would encourage everyone to sign up for our next virtual conference, which is February 20th through 24th, called Global Supply Chain Week. And you see there in the middle, day 3, we have that day set aside for food, beverage, and CPG. And that's going to include, the guest I'm going to be speaking to in a minute, Ben Richey from Black Rifle Coffee Company. It's also going to include Tom Madrecki. Some of you know Tom or have seen Tom speak on either this show or another one of our shows. He is the logistics guy at the Consumer Brands Association. So that's the association that handles a lot of the CPG brands. So a lot that they are talking about right now that I've talked about on other episodes of the Stockout. So I encourage you to do those things. And I'm going to hit on just one news story today before talking to our guest, and that is the FDA is moving forward on front of packaging labeling requirements. And I actually think this could be potentially a big deal for the CPG industry. You see this is from the front of a package. This is in compliance with what's already mandated in the UK, and that's actually a bag of carrots. And for carrots, it's not going to be a big deal. You see, green for fats and salt, kind of an orange for sugar. And so basically the idea is, no one reads those table on the back of food packages, or at least doesn't read it very closely. So if they make it sort of a stoplight right in the beginning, right in the front of the package, more people will use it. This is sort of a zoomed in example of that. This is something that might go on a sugary cereal, and you might look at this and say, well, that's more sugar than I want if it's 38% of what I'm supposed to have all day with this little bowl of Frosted Flakes or whatever it is. And so, I sort of surmise in the FreightWaves Stockout newsletter that, some of the CPG companies might, add SKUs and have some healthier SKUs, some SKUs that are sort of the original, which would be a departure from what we've seen in recent quarters, where a lot of the CPGs are rationalizing the number of SKUs they have. And the FDA is moving forward on this. This was a recommendation last September from the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. And they're going to survey 3,000 adults, see if they really find these nutrition labels more helpful. The Consumer Brands Association has already come out against it. They say it takes away from marketing space, and it's just not necessary because you have that other table. But I actually think, the consumers are going to find it helpful. I don't think many people sort of consider how much salt they're getting. So that's something that I think is something to watch in the CPG industry, and the type of thing that, I talk about in the CPG newsletter, in addition to all the freight data that we get sort of throughout the freightwaves.com website. So with that, I want to bring in our guest today, which is Ben Richey. He's a Senior Director of Distribution and Transportation at the Black Rifle Coffee Company. He has experience as the Director of Transportation at Pepsi Logistics and Director of E-commerce Supply Chain at Frito-Lay. Can we get Ben on the screen? And Ben, thank you for joining me.
Great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me. Love the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for being a friend of the show, supporter of the show. Really appreciate it. I'm going to start with a macro question. I know we've talked about this sort of in other meetings, but so much is coming out on sort of the consumer. The Wall Street Journal today had a big thing on the consumer potentially slowing down. Have you noticed anything from your perspective in terms of consumer changing behavior?
At this point, Well, I know all of us are keeping a very close eye on it, and we're expecting trends to really start kicking in if they haven't already in CPG, as far as like what are people reaching for? What are American consumers reaching for off the shelf? Are they trading down? What do the behaviors look like for us, for Black Rifle Coffee Company specifically? We haven't seen a significant effect yet, and part of that, I think, there's a couple reasons for that. One is just the strength of our brand. I was able to share a little earlier on what the chocolate Dooner, same thing that, from the beginning of this company in 2014, Evan Hafer and Matt Best, the CEO and founder, have done such a great job with building a very powerful brand that I think resonates with a lot of people in our country. And so they want to reach for our product. And now we've made it easier to reach for, since it's on the shelf at Walmart as of about 6 months ago. So, from a bagged coffee perspective, no, I would say we haven't seen any slowdown. In fact, we're continuing to grow. And then for our ready to drink, the cappuccino in the can, I mean, we continue to turn on whole regions through distributors, through beverage distributors. So we haven't seen it yet, keeping a very close eye on it.
Yeah, that's good to hear that you're still showing resilience. And I agree with you that it's a really strong brand, and one that's really gaining a lot more recognition here lately, in the minds of consumers. Wanted to ask you, can you talk through some of the supply chain challenges that you've had? And I'll let you sort of take that question any way you want to take it. What's sort of been on the front of your mind with your supply chain, transportation networks, dealing with Walmart? It's just what has been sort of the biggest challenge over the last few months?
Yeah, our biggest challenge has really been keeping up with our own growth, is the best way that I can say it. We've gone from 4 warehouses to 9, or we might be in 10 here pretty soon. That's going to keep growing. From a carrier-based perspective, we were really pushing everything through one broker for over the road. And I guess even in parcel, we're very heavy in one carrier. Now we've diversified our carrier base across our network. So the biggest challenge has been, and this is a little different from, coming from Amazon and then coming from PepsiCo, where you have networks that they're certainly fast changing and dynamic, and leadership and great companies like those does a great job of keeping up with changes in the market, and so things are dynamic. But probably, except for some of my time in Frito-Lay e-commerce that was really nascent and growing fast, this is even faster growth than what I've been a part of before. So the biggest supply chain challenge for us is keeping up with that growth, and then partnering with whether it's over-the-road carriers, parcel carriers, or warehouse 3PLs, partnering with the organizations that are going to be nimble and with us and help us grow. It's a big challenge, because we have to make good decisions on who we're partnering with, so that as the growth continues to happen, and I literally have these conversations as we're going into RFPs, or we're giving maybe a carrier a relatively large award, that they're ready for that. And in most cases, we've already assessed, we've already seen what a potential partner or potential larger partner can do. But as we're going into a bigger, as we're making a bigger agreement, or maybe giving a bigger award to certain partners, we have that conversation. Say, hey, as we grow, there's other things we're going to need for you to do. We might need for you to deliver to the ground. We might need for you to do more warehouse delivery. We might need more capacity in this or that region. And so we have those conversations going on. We're sort of very particular about that. That's been the biggest challenge. I wouldn't say that we weren't. That's a challenge we've been able to to meet head on. But that's where the most work has been, just getting the right partners in place.
So it sounds like you're partnering with larger companies that can handle not just what you can throw at them right now, but they can handle where you think you're going to be 5 years down the road, maybe ones that offer a number of different services, maybe different modes, maybe warehousing, maybe all these different things. So that's interesting. Has there been any just challenge as far as, because you're so fast growing, it just makes it difficult to forecast how much capacity you're going to need and all of those things? Probably it was easier when you're at Frito-Lay, had some concept of track record of those products.
Right. Yeah. Definitely were companies I've been at in the past. You have that built out cadence of demand that's pretty regular. You might introduce a new SKU or a new set of SKUs but even that you can benchmark off of previous launches. And for us at Black Rifle Coffee Company, because of the strength of the brand and because we're just, continually turning on in new markets where we know there is demand, but sometimes it's more explosive than we expected even. It is a challenge. Like you say, it's a challenge to build out, and as we're building systems in our, we're building out our ERP, building out our enterprise systems too, which is going to take us a little while. We're having to do a lot of solving on spreadsheets. We're having to do a lot of solving with a really fantastic and amazing team across our planning and our procurement, our entire supply chain. And I'd say, go even further than that into marketing and sales. Everyone works together on this and does such a great job of figuring out, as we're launching something like Vanilla Bomb, our new one of our new ready to drink SKUs that is really great drink, by the way, and recommend picking one up from your convenience store and trying it out. How much we're actually going to need to make. And I think most of the time we shoot kind of low and we get low on stock pretty quickly. And then we make a lot more and we overshoot a little bit and we have to pull it back. So these are great problems to have, but as you're alluding to, it is a big challenge for us, especially in an environment, going back to your first question, where it's sort of like, well, what are consumers going to be reaching for? Where should we be leaning in? And what should we be getting to the shelf, and how quickly, to make sure that we're keeping our operation lean while we're growing, while we're experiencing this tremendous growth. So it's a fun equation. In my estimation, it's a really fun equation to try to figure out, and it's fun to solve, and then it's fun to go and execute on. But it is a challenge. And I would say, right now we're in a pretty good spot with all of our inventories. Clearly, we've had heavy inventory across industry, and we're trying to work through some of those inventory gluts across industry. And I think right now we've kind of leveled things. We're just trying to get it in the right place in the country at this point.
Great to hear. And I wanted to ask you, some of the other CPGs have talked about things like not having the service at the level of quality that they would like. Like General Mills has talked about not knowing when the truck is going to show up on time. Kraft Heinz said there, every day goes by, there's some ingredient we don't have or some packaging we don't have. We've heard of things like, not having enough aluminum cans or not having, glass jars. If you had those types of issues where you've just had a certain ingredient constraints or certain packaging constraints?
Ingredients, I don't recall anything specifically that really held us back too much. Certainly, we experienced the same aluminum can we didn't have a shortage ourselves, but we certainly had to lean into making sure we had enough cans as we were ramping up our ready to drink production into the end of last year with these new SKUs that I was just referring to, and then just the demand on the basic set of 4 original ready to drink SKUs. So yes, with aluminum cans, we experienced the same thing. I guess you could say, thankfully, even with the explosive growth, we're still a bit smaller, than a PepsiCo or other organizations that need millions and millions of cans to get through their production. At the same time, with being a little bit right now, at least for the moment, a little bit smaller need for the cans than other much larger organizations. It was still tough to get what we needed there for a minute, but we did kind of get ahead of it. We have plenty of cans now for production for sure. I think that was largely, it's just like anything in supply chain, right? We knew we have a great procurement team who knew where the risk was going to be, so they got out in front of, especially the cans, but also in corrugate and some of the other ingredients, like you were talking about, things like there's a lot of ingredients that go into that ready to drink. I'm learning a ton about how that stuff's made, the sugar and the extract and the different flavorings and everything. So they were able to get out in front of making sure that we had enough shelf life to be able to make it for the next, several months, and really start having some safety stock, which has been really cool to watch and be a part of with that team, just because they've been so flexible and so smart about the way that they have procured for us to be able to get out in front of any shortages. Now, at the same time, it looks like we're coming out of those shortages. We're coming out of the risk period a little bit. I would be more concerned now about the price of some of that stuff. But again, we'll for the moment we've got everything we need to make what we need to get to go to market wherever we need to. You asked about trucks not showing up too. That's an interesting one. We have not experienced that much, and I'm not sure why that is. I think the team has done a great job with procurement, but like I said, when I first stepped in, we were really pushing most of our over-the-road freight through one broker. Now we're diversified, and now we're running RFPs and we're awarding freight out. So, and I don't think it's changed very much. We have seen occasional, I would say almost pretty consistent fall offs. And that's just normal stuff that happens in the market, whether it was tight beginning of 2022 or loose middle to end of 2022. We've seen sort of consistent falls, but we're able to recover really quickly. And I think for our length of haul and our time frame to deliver, we've still had a really high on-time delivery percentage, 98, 99% on-time delivery. So a little bit of effect, but nothing big to speak of there.
That's great. It sounds like that's really high service levels. I wanted to ask you, so now you mentioned the procurement with the RFPs. How are you approaching that differently today versus, let's say, a year ago? And maybe to put some additional context in it, sort of throughout your career, how does this compare to other economic cycles?
Yeah, it's interesting now. I guess for Black Rifle Coffee Company, just to be clear though too, as we've grown, we've just now grown into having a transportation management system and running RFPs. We ran a very small one about 6 months ago. The end of this year, we're getting into the cycle now, the RFP cycle. And we just ran one for about a third of our lanes. And you have to keep in mind, for us, because we're growing so fast and adding new lanes and new customers all the time, we're still not really able to bid out a lot, more than half of our lanes, because they're going to be so sporadic as we grow those corridors out. But so we didn't have a bid process a year ago. We do now, and we just ran one and it went really well. And we've got our carrier set in place, and then we've got the rest of our lanes that will still be kind of around the spot market a little bit, which right now is okay. We know that's not a good plan for the long term, and we'll continue to bid out more and more. The dynamics that you're alluding to are really interesting, right? This is why we love truckload. We love working in the freight industry, at least for me, and I know a lot of my counterparts, is solving this kind of thing. As far as in my estimation, we're in a different kind of cycle now that we're all trying to wrap our heads around, like, what does the new cycle really look like? It's just not, I don't think it's ever going to be the same as it used to be. You got beverage season, and then you've got peak season. both of those seasons did something different than what we would have normally expected if you go back to 2019 and earlier. They both did something completely different, even though we thought we were getting closer to what normal used to look like this year than what we would have expected, right? So it's an expect the unexpected. Really, in my estimation, you got to really get into the weeds and do some math to try to figure out to really make your call on what the market's going to do. And then, to me, that's how we're running our bid. Then, too, we're looking for, hey, what do we think the market's going to do? Where do we think the shifts are going to be? What hasn't changed is that the partners that we're bringing in are the ones that are going to be able to ride with us through the entire year and through the entire cycle, whatever we think that cycle is going to look like. Which again, I think with all of the geopolitical pressures, all of the commodity pressures, all of, the domestically inflation pressures, we can go through all the charts and all of the trends, right, to tell us that we're going to continue to see some bullwhips. We're going to continue to see trends changing relatively quickly and with pretty significant magnitude in some places. And I'm looking for partners. Our team is always looking for partners that are going to be able to ride that with us and clearly not take advantage of us. And frankly, when it goes the other way, they know we won't take advantage of them. It's partnership. So in order to grow, we got to have great partnerships. So that's how we're approaching the truckload bid as well. We're looking for great partners who are relatively aligned to what we all think the market's going to do and how we're going to support each other through thick and thin, if you will, through tight and loose, if you will, as the market shifts. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's what a lot of shippers want is the carriers that are partners. And it's like, sometimes it seems like, well, they're partners when it suits them, but then as soon as they can find, highly rated spot freight, they're not such great partners anymore. So it's really kind of have a longer term memory, especially in this industry that's kind of weird with the contracts don't have a lot of teeth. So that's great commentary. Well, you mentioned beverage season. I know beverage season in beer is the summer, like Memorial Day to Labor Day, right? Is there a beverage season in coffee?
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's a great question. Because we have our ready to drink as well. So our ready to drink season, I think we have two seasons, right? We have the normal beverage season, summertime, because it is a chilled drink. You can drink it warm if you want. I think it tastes a lot better chilled. And that's how you find it in the store for the most part, is chilled in the refrigerator. But then there's also a winter season, right, for the ready to drink product, but also for especially for coffee, right, in our outposts and just with the flavors we come out with, just as like any coffee company, I guess, would have, is the spiced pumpkin and all the different Thanksgiving and Christmas flavors. And for coffee, I guess you'd say that. It's coffee season all year long. As far as your ground and your pods and what we call rounds, that season doesn't really end. There are just some specific times when we do have certain flavors come out that are seasonal. But probably it's really the ready to drink that falls in line with that normal higher volume beverage season from. What is it, May to July, August, right, when it's hotter.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Only have about a minute left. Quickly, challenge of dealing with Walmart. Were they much different than dealing with other retailers because they're so big, or not really?
I would. We have a great partner. We have a great warehouse partner that we're consolidating through and distributing through. So it has not been it's not been difficult, but I would say again, like most things that we've dealt with a fast growing company where there's a lot of demand, probably where if there was anywhere that we stumbled at all, it was just making sure we had enough inventory to get all that's Walmart, as Walmart's was actually making orders and the demand increased pretty quickly. So we had to quickly make sure we're making enough to get to our consolidator, to get to Walmart. We got through that pretty well without getting fined too badly. But we're just happy to be working with Walmart. It's a great it's a great place to be and place to have our product. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really about all the time we have, but I just want to thank you, Ben, for spending half an hour with me, and everyone go check out our Global Supply Chain Week. We'll have another interview with Ben, another interview with Consumer Brands Association, among other food and beverage content, and hope everyone has a great Monday.